we've just done over 100 grand a month, so 1.2 million for recurring revenue,
million, okay.
52% profit margin,
Okay,
so it's going to be about 540.
52% profit margins.
52% net.
Today we've got Chris Hindle on, who is the Ops Director at Fraser James.
We grow at 45% compounded currently. We were at 55 last year.
Now Chris started in the financial planning profession around about 12 years ago now at Jones Hill.
And I remember getting into his office and thinking, I'm not going to leave until I get a job.
He became a practice manager there before becoming a senior paraplanner at Ovation Finance and then going on to create Fraser James with his business partner, James.
What did you do exactly to try and get yourself in front of people?
Yeah, great question. And I'd probably do something similar today. The first thing I did was the second thing I did is I tried to...
So we go over his career.
We moved to a 4-day work week, but we remember thinking what we want is quality, not quantity. We want people to be well rested and well recovered so that they could come in and deliver excellence.
In terms of productivity, was it just as productive?
We also go into the inner runnings of Fraser James and what an operations director actually does in the financial planning profession today.
There was 2 of us in 2023. There's 7 of us now. I think there'll be 10 of us within the next 6 months. There's a few things I know now that I wish I knew then. The first is
Just tell me how you got into the financial planning profession.
Sure, yeah. I've always been a young one, it felt like, in financial planning. And then as you say that, I was just thinking, I think it's been 11 years now, coming on 12 years ago. I go back, I was at university. The day before I started university, they phoned me up and said, that financial planning course that you want to do isn't running anymore, that's been cancelled, but we've got something very similar. I said, okay, what's that? Accountancy. I said, okay, what's that? They said, it's just like financial planning. I said, okay, I'll give that a go. Did that for 2 years, went and did an internship, did placement year at an accountancy firm, and realised it's nothing like financial planning, nor did I know what financial planning was, but this wasn't what I wanted. So I went back to the university and said, no, I do want to do the financial planning thing. Went to another university to go and finish in business and financial planning. And there was sort of like this chance presentation by Jason Butler, and he came in, delivered a nice workshop, and kind of talked around what is real financial planning. And it's like this client, trusted advisor, and then a range of professional services is delivered to them. And I remember thinking, that's lovely. It's like this blend of art and science, the spreadsheet and the story, because accountancy was just the spreadsheet. It was just the numbers. There was no human, there was no person, there was no purpose, I felt, with it. So I felt it was a bit boring. Financial planning had like this real person, this real problem, this real opportunity, but you still got to use a lot of that analytical, technical, mathematical background. So kind of once I finished that degree, I started looking around, accidentally did not fall into financial planning, kind of purposefully looked for opportunities to get into financial planning. And I think I went from John O'Groats to Land's End, probably, for interviews. I literally was the top of Scotland to the south of Cornwall. And nobody was interested in somebody who had, 0 experience, because that is just the challenge of people getting into financial planning. If you haven't got the experience, we don't want to give it to you and the time it takes to train. But there was somebody, a chap called Brian Hill, run a company called Jones Hill in Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire. Small, and I didn't realise how lucky I was at the time, because it was just a sea of sameness, from the outside. But small, directly authorised, independent, kind of boutique financial planning firm. And there was, I think, 4 of us, or 5 of us when I joined. And he didn't have a job for me, but he kind of just responded to my persistency and said, look, I don't have a job, but come in and have a coffee and I'll see if I can point you in the right direction. And I remember getting into his office and thinking, I'm not going to leave until I get a job. And if I need to come back again, I'll come back for another coffee next month, and so on and so forth. But I was just dogged to get a job. And he said, right, you can be the assistant to the assistant administrator, which kind of meant you can make tea for the person who makes tea for the boss. And I was like, great, let's do that. Let's give that a go. I joined them June, I want to say 2014 or June 2015. So it was just at the time that we had the pension freedoms come in.
Right, okay, yep.
A lot of profound change that was going on in the industry. It was very busy. And I remember thinking, sitting down with Brian, and he said, it's all changed. the whole financial advisory sector profession is about to change. He says, we're going to go from this point of sale, need to cash in my pension, get an annuity, I need to save for retirement income for life, to this ongoing service model where we're going to be managing the person and their investments and their income and their drawdown and their tax. And he says, it's going to be this sort of renewed ongoing service relationship. And I remember thinking at the time how insightful he was, how fortunate I was with the timing and the opportunity. And I spent 4 years there, I want to say, thereabouts. Gone from the assistant administrator to the administrator, junior paraplanner, senior paraplanner, practice manager by the time I left. And the business was profoundly different by the time I left as well. We had a really good team in place. There was a really good plan. We really focused who the client profile was. We refined the service proposition. But that was me cutting my teeth, and I'm forever grateful for Brian taking that chance on me. For someone who's young, dumb, and naive and didn't know what I had to offer, but he clearly saw something in me that was worthwhile.
What did you were saying there that there's a lot to digest there because there was so much that you said, so much great information. What when you said that you went from John O'Groats all the way down to Land's End to try and get that job. What did you do exactly to try and get yourself in front of people?
Yeah, great question. And I'd probably do similar today if I was trying to start out and get into the profession. There's a few things I did. The first thing I did was I kind of got a tattoo, as I call it, and by which I meant I went and self-funded my R01. I wanted to show to any employer that I was speaking to that I'm committed to this, that I'm willing to invest in myself, and what I'm looking is for somebody else who would invest alongside me. And that get a tattoo is the sort of thing where I think people go, he's in it, and I want him in with us because of that. So that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did is I tried to get inside the tent rather than outside the tent. So emerging organizations like the IFP at the time and Next Gen Planners and some other organizations were just starting to have communities, were just starting to have conversations and events. And I thought, rather than be outside, let's try and get inside. So I paid a £10 a month membership for the IFP or whatever it was, £12 a month for Next Gen. All of the things that enabled me to just, oh, I've heard of him, I've seen him, I hear what's going on. It allowed me to start to build those connections. And then the last thing I did is I tried to work out who's good and who's not. And I would use the common Vouch for top advisors, New Model Advisor top 100, who's the CISI accredited chartered firms. All of these things which are like hallmarks of some degree of success. For me, that then basically got me down to a shortlist. And then it's, I think, a personalized approach to any application. Sometimes send letters, still think they're underrated. When you get physical mail, it kind of takes you by surprise and it makes you open it. I'd pick up the phone and I'd physically go into the offices. I tried to do what everyone else wasn't, which was going through graduate recruitment applications, sending out speculative CVs, occasional applications on LinkedIn Easy Apply. And I kind of felt like the long cut would be the shortcut in the end for me, because I felt that it would make me stand out, would be differentiated in some particular way, and it would allow me to understand who the decision makers are, get close to them, understand their options and the proposition. So yeah, a few things. Get a tattoo, get inside the tent, and then try and apply and stand out differently.
Well, I think the thing as well that I think you differentiate yourself, as you were saying there, but I think the other thing as well is that if you're going to people directly for these roles, well, as with Brian, you were saying, he didn't actually have anything. But the thing is, though, is that he's got no other option other than you. So he might think to himself, oh, do you know what? We do kind of need somebody to do whatever. And do you know what? Chris is here. I'll take him on. Why not?
Yeah, and look, if I look back, there was a lot of luck in whatever success I've had to date. But I do believe like you increase the surface area of luck through your own efforts and preparation, and that opportunity creation, showing up, being prepared, being organized, being helpful, being persistent, I think is the sort of thing that separates people who get the first no of we're not quite hiring right now to there's a warm candidate. So if and when the opportunity creates itself, you are in the consideration.
Yeah, I think the expression that Gary Player came up with, which is the harder I try, the luckier I get, comes to mind there.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's, I'm not going to preach too much, but the thing is, though, is that I say it to everybody all the time that's trying to get into the financial planning profession, that so many people come up to me every single week asking me about it. And the thing is, you just need to try and don't go to recruiters, genuinely. Do not go to recruiters, because there isn't, for somebody that's green, that's coming into the profession, it's quite difficult for recruiters to make any money out of it. So, do you know what? Just go and do the work yourself.
Yeah.
And if you lay the foundations down, you'll get something like you did, and you've had this great career. So, and it's still got a long time left as well. So you worked your way up. So administrator, trainee paraplanner, senior paraplanner, practice manager at Jones Hill. Just tell me because people probably don't really know, what does practice manager at Jones Hill, what was that like as a role? What did you do there? Because I mean, there's so many things that practice manager can mean. Yeah.
And I didn't know either. When Brian at the time was like, do you want to move into this practice manager role? Kind of my first question was, well, what on earth is that? Because I had no idea. Is that an office manager, the sort of person who goes in the stationery and the supplies and makes sure everyone's got teas and coffees? Is that somebody who's sitting on board meetings? I literally had no reference point. I think the role of practice manager has come far better defined maybe over the last 10 years. People like Brett Davison, Dominica through her MPC group have kind of got together operations communities. Dimensional has another one of other operations leaders and professionals to understand the roles and responsibilities of practice manager. Now, what I do now in my ops director role is different from what I did in my practice manager role, but at that particular point in time, I guess I had 3 responsibilities. The first was team and staffing. So it was reward, recognition, recruitment, remuneration, retention. So those are the things that were responsible as one of them. You've kind of put your HR hat on and you go, have we got the best people? Are we getting the best out of them? Do we need more good people? What are our resourcing needs? Let's get them into the business. Let's make sure we're looking after the people in the business. As someone who's very young and very inexperienced, that was the one I probably struggled with the most because it was a new role for me. I didn't have the experience. I almost felt like I didn't have the earned respect through responsibility yet. So we had an existing team, trying to upskill those, trying to grow those, but also trying to recruit new. That was a big part of the role. That was probably about a third of the overall role, looking after the existing team. 2, looking after the operations of the business, making sure the trains run on time, that was our phrase, making sure workflows were executed correctly, making sure we had the right templates, making sure we had the right processes, making sure we had good onboarding manuals, making sure we had client files that were correct and up to date. But I guess it was everything operationally within the business that's not necessarily seeing the clients. That was number 2. Number 3 was compliance. It was making sure everything we did as a business was appropriately managed from a risk perspective, that we had all of the correct disclosures in place, that we were making sure we were treating customers fairly, and as new regulation come in and new requirements came in, make sure those are fully embedded. So we had things like Consumer Duty, and we had MiFID, and we had PROD, and all of these things which are just top-down directives and principles. You've got to understand how to practically implement those within the business and then build those into your processes, build those into your client service. Those are the big 3 for me. Operations, make sure the training's run on time. HR, getting the best out of existing and new people. And then compliance, making sure we're risk managed.
The HR aspect I found was, what did you say? It was reward, recognition, retention, and what was the other?
Recruitment, reward, recognition, retention. And then unfortunately, if you need to offboard somebody as well, but I can't find an R word.
Well, it's kind of, it's LinkedIn, isn't it? It's really interesting. I'm interested in the retention side here. What did you do there to make sure that the best people stayed on?
Yeah, there's 2 schools of thought here, I guess, isn't there? It's like, do you put some form of handcuff on them? Could be a restrictive covenant, could be future vesting of equity, could be some other carrot or stick to make them stay. Or do you try and create a great culture and a great workplace where they don't want to leave? And I was very much on the latter side. I remember thinking, if somebody wants to go, you should never prevent them. They may physically be in the building, but they may have mentally checked out. And really, we're in the knowledge economy here. So get the people who want to be here, but create such a great place that they want to be here. So there was just like a number of things we would do. We moved to a 4-day work week. We were a very, very early pioneer of a 4-day work week. This is going back to 2016, 2017. They didn't have the national government trials in and various other things. But we remember thinking, what we want is quality, not quantity. We want people to be well rested and well recovered so that they could come in and deliver excellence. To improve their working week, to improve their weekend by 50% effectively, made sure that when they came back in on Monday or Tuesday or whatever day they came back in, that we had really strong, aligned, focused, motivated people. And it's like the Parkinson's law. If you give it 32 hours, you get it done in 32 hours. And if you give it 40, it will take 40. You won't necessarily get more or better work done because you give it more time. That constraints breeds creativity was a real mantra that we had. And one of the constraints was we would reduce the hours. Second thing we would do is we would introduce remote working. That was very, very early on. We wasn't fully remote, but we had hybrid before hybrid was really a thing. This was way before COVID. And what we wanted to do is sort of recognize that some people work in different ways and try and let them play to their strengths. If you had a heavy report to do, or you had a particular piece of technical or deep work, you were just granted the opportunity to work remotely, wherever, whenever, without seeking permission or approval. We wanted to give people the setup that worked best for them. Kind of to that point as well, is we allow people to work flexibly. They could come in the hours that they want, start later, finish later, start earlier, finish earlier, flex around them. So for example, we had a working mum in the business. She would come in later, she would leave earlier, and then she would log on and work later in the afternoon and evening. She still got her work done, but what we did is we tried to design the work around her lifestyle so that we could work with those people who sometimes wouldn't get easy opportunities in the workplace because of their own personal circumstances or family circumstances. And then the last one is, and we carry over many of these principles now, no micromanagement, try and give people the autonomy, find great people, move stuff out of their way, give them the support they need, treat them like adults, let them do their best work, and don't manage them and hold them closely. And I think by doing those things, it enabled a culture where people felt heard, they felt respected, they felt listened to, so therefore they aligned and they stayed and they contributed, as opposed to this sort of like Maslow's scientific management of like how do you like maximize the utility or the efficiency of an employee. I think you try and create the right conditions and the right culture, and they will bubble up to the top. I think they will be self-motivated. I think they will be self-disciplined if they're working with somebody who genuinely cares about them.
Well, this was 2016 that you.
2015, I think I joined the business. 2017-ish, I was practice manager. So it was around about 2017 time, 2018.
So you were 26 years old going and.
Yeah, 27, something like that.
26, 27.
Yeah.
How, I mean, you already alluded to the fact that you needed, that there were a few issues, well, not issues, but it was difficult because you needed to, whether you had the gravitas, or I'm sure you did, but what was it, how long did it take for people to take you seriously in that role?
It's a really good question. I've always had this view: if you're good enough, you're old enough.
Yeah,
just as a general principle. And I work with some people now who are much younger and they're far more talented than me. So I think like, if you can take your ego to one side and sort of, but then for those who maybe have a slightly different view around things, I think you show them you're good enough. You show them that you care. You show them that you're consistent. You show them that you're going to show up. Then they start to take you seriously. I think when you, and there is a thing I think with graduates, and I certainly had this, you get pumped up at university, you come out, you think you're the king of the world, and then you realize you really don't know a lot of how things get done in the world. And I just ate that humble pie, right? I did not think I was better than people. I did not think I was, in a power to order them. But I think this sort of like servant leadership model of like, how can I support you? How can I help you? I think people start to like you and they start to listen to you and they start to respect you when you've shown up for them first. So I think by going first and giving them everything they want and need and really listening to them, they're going to be far more receptive than when you maybe suggest some changes or improvements in the organization, because you've already built that relationship on trust and respect where you've kind of shown up for the other person first. But it took a little while to answer your question, maybe about a year.
Yeah, I can imagine it being, I remember doing, I can't really relate in that way because I tend to do all of my work on the phone. But I remember a few times that when I first started doing this, I was 21 and I had to say a few things to try and, because I wasn't face to face with people, people didn't know how old I was. But I remember saying to some 50-year-olds something like, "Oh, you're a good lad, aren't you?" Something like that. It was really, I don't know, it was maybe to pump myself up, but it's a completely different scenario when you're managing people and you're still young.
And for what it's worth, that imposter syndrome, for want of a better phrase, I'm not sure that ever goes. I think it's always healthy when it's there, even if it creates tension and frustration. But we had that when we set up Fraser James, the business now. We weren't that much older than we were then. And we were thinking, well, who on earth would trust their life savings to us? Who on earth would want to come work with us? We don't know anything. We don't have any clients. We don't have much money. We don't have a reputation. Like all of the conditions that you might want to succeed, we just didn't have them. And that's still there today in different guises and forms. It shows up in different ways at different stages, but I think it's really healthy. And that trite saying of like trying to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think is really true. That was a point that I was uncomfortable with. It was an age thing, and I felt there was some age discrimination. In hindsight, it was probably more in my head than anything else.
Yeah, I think that is the case a lot of the time. So, just going back to what you were saying here about the 4-day working week, I'm just interested to see what, in terms of productivity, was it just as productive?
Hard to say. I don't think we quantitatively measured it to be able to give you a definitive answer. We didn't notice a reduction in productivity. We didn't notice a reduction in service levels. We were a growing practice during that period of time as well. And we probably got a little bit behind the ball in hiring, so we felt busier. And I think necessity is a great motivator to improve productivity. We didn't notice any taper off at all in productivity. Now, the one thing that's important to say is like, it was a 4-day work week, but a 5-day salary. Like there was no, we're going to give you 80% of your salary or anything like that. It was sort of, this is the output that we're looking for. This is the productivity. These are our business goals. We're going to be flexible around where we work, when we work, and we want to make sure that you get more time back so that you're well rested and recovered. But everything was a trial. And anything we introduce now to the business or dip back there and we say, hey, let's try this for 30 days. And if it works for 30, let's renew it for 60. And if it works for 60, let's put it in for 90. And everything was just a rolling trial. And we would just adapt and iterate along the way because we didn't have all of the answers at the outset. And nor did we want to pretend that we did. And we knew that we would learn things that we just didn't even know existed. So it would give us an opportunity to go, we're not going to be fixed on this forever. We can roll this back. We can iterate if we need to. And I think other people got more comfortable with that as well. You know, as mad as it sounds, there was some resistance to moving to 4-day work week from the staff perspective. I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm not going to have the time. I don't know if I'm going to get my work done. And it's a trial. And I think when you introduce things at a trial, people are far more receptive and understanding to it. But on the did productivity dip, we didn't notice it, but nor did we like tightly quantitatively measure it. It was more of a philosophy thing for us. We felt like this was the right thing to do. Brian, who was the business owner at the time, had an incredibly active, and healthy life. He was a ski instructor. He would travel regularly. And he says he spends his whole life as a financial planner telling clients, make sure you live the life that's true to you, that you have good balance and flexibility, that you have time for yourself. Then doing it himself, but not doing it with the staff, didn't feel morally right. What we wanted to do was start with the end in mind, work back from there, make sure that everybody has good, meaningful employment, but everybody has good opportunity in life to live, whatever the version of their life was.
And then I'm just going to go to the remote side of things, because that's something that's always interested me, because you've got a lot of people that still, there's, I think particularly around London, I would say, you've got this emphasis that you need to be in the office all the time. What would you say to somebody that's thinking to themselves, you know what, it's really difficult trying to manage people on a remote basis. I don't know whether the work's going to get done. I don't know if I can trust people. What would you say to somebody?
To somebody who's an employer?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. Like we, as a business now, have always been remote from day one. So we're clearly pro-remote, but it does come with challenges and it does come with considerations. Some of the things we didn't know at the time when we went fully remote that perhaps we wish we knew was how difficult it is, but yet important it is to build culture and maintain it in a fully remote organization. Culture is often built by somebody bumping into someone in the hallway and then deciding to go for a drink or having a spontaneous lunch or sitting next to each other on a video call and having a laugh about something. It's those small moments that kind of accumulated over time that you don't necessarily get in a remote organization. So you need to be far more intentional around engineering those and creating those moments of opportunity, and also not being dogmatic to we're 100% remote 100% of the time. Some things lend themselves better to in person. Like when we hire somebody now, that first week they come and spend with us in the office and the whole team comes in and we go and we have nice lunch and we have a laugh and we do an activity because it's just fun and people let their guard down and they start to know and see the people around them and trust them and familiarize themselves with each other, so that when you're working remotely, you're not in this you've got good context of the people that you're working with. You understand, how people's preferences are, their communication styles. So it's easier to work with them in a remote setting. You're a little bit blind in remote and you don't see silos of information. You don't see culture not being maintained. So you need to be careful, I think, around creating those opportunities. The other one is like information. Information gets shared very easily and openly in an open plan office environment, because you'll just hear about a conversation going on over there or you get pulled into this meeting. Far less so in remote organizations. I think you need to be far more purposeful around if you work in pods, making sure you've got vertical, horizontal, diagonal knowledge share, crossing people across pods, having opportunities to work across teams so that you've really got best practice that's kind of spread throughout the organization as opposed to pockets of information that's siloed. But to your point around you can't watch them, you can't supervise them, you can't manage them, there's different schools of thought here. My personal one is you hold people accountable to outcomes. Excellence is expected. You're very clear around what the deliverables and the objectives are. And then you really don't micromanage at the inputs level. You don't manage where they work, when they work, how they work. I think that's the way to really annoy people, frustrate them. If you need to be looking at your employee to see if they're getting work done, I think you've either got a person problem as opposed to a process problem, or you've got a management problem. But I don't think you need to be able to sit and see your employees physically to create great work and have great culture. But I think you've got to start with trust. You've got to make sure you hire good people. You've got to create great conditions for success. You've got to be clear around the accountabilities from an outcomes perspective. And then you've got to hold them to that from a standards perspective. But I think the not being able to see them, not being able to manage them, I don't know, I don't think it's the best approach.
Well, I guess the thing is that for you, it's you started it from the beginning. The foundations were built from the very, very beginning that you were going to do remote-based working. So it's probably more difficult to try and get that out. If you're an organisation that has had everybody coming into the office, it is difficult to get people away from that, I suspect. But people are expecting it more nowadays.
Yeah. So like COVID happened, right, and everybody went remote for a period, and then some organisations stayed remote, fewer and fewer. Some of them went back to the office full time, and many of them stuck in this hybrid phase. I think it's like, where's your centre of gravity? Like, if your centre of gravity is in the office and everything happens around that centre of gravity, then everything that's not that is a distraction and it's difficult. For example, we're a paper-based organisation. I'm not in the office, so I don't have the paper, or I need this certain technology or this equipment or this contact. I can only contact them through or in this office. I think just working out where that centre of gravity is and then being very purposeful around aligning everything for that. So when I think about our business being a fully remote business, there is 0 pieces of paper in the organisation. We do not have a printer in the organisation. Every single one of our processes is fully digitized. It can be completely device dependent. So irrespective of whether you're on mobile, whether you're on a laptop, it doesn't matter. You work fully digitally and you can work anywhere, anytime. Now there's things that you need there, things around VPN, things around access, and you design that, I think, at an organizational level, if you know what your center of gravity is. What I hear from people who are like 2 and 3, 2 here and 3 there, 2 at home, 3 in the office, 2 in the office, 3 at home, is like, I find it really hard. I don't know, am I on this video meeting? I'm meant to go into the office. I need to plan the travel. I've got different locations. I've got resourcing requirements. That hybrid thing is quite hard. But I think in our sector of financial advice, financial planning, most things can be done online, if not everything now. So I don't think it's a binary choice. I think you can choose to some degree what you do with what person, but I think you just need to be purposeful around how you design work and how work gets done and your workflows and your processes and your document requirements and printing and delivery and distribution and signing and just everything that's required in it. I think it just requires a little bit of thought. And I think when we got thrown into COVID, people didn't have that luxury of thought. They were just responding to the situation. And I just feel like, and again, it was luck, but we were remote before COVID. So there was much disruption during COVID, but in terms of like changing where we work, that just wasn't one that we really had to change with.
I feel really bad now because I've got like paper right here. And that was the first thing that Chris said to me when I met him was, "Oh, you're a paper man." When COVID came then, what did that, in fact, you know what? I'm going to ask that question later.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to Ovation. So you went to Ovation. Did you meet James there? Was that where you met James? Or was that
I heard of Ovation through Next Gen Planners, and again, this is the inside the tent. Tom Morris, who's now the MD there, used to run the Next Gen Planners Roundtable workshop over in Bristol at the Corn Exchange. Wonderful place. We'd get 20 relatively young, relatively green financial planners together, share ideas, best practice, guest talks, whatever. Tom started a podcast called The Wellbeing Podcast with Chris Budd, and I remember thinking, this is a company I really like the sound of. But I'd only ever worked at one firm. Whilst I was happy at that one firm, Jones Hill, I didn't know any different. And I felt that it would be healthy for me from a professional growth perspective to see different perspectives, to get different ideas, to speak to different advisors, different processes, different service propositions, because I wanted to continue growing. And while I didn't hit a ceiling at Jones Hill necessarily, what Ovation provided was a different proposition altogether. They delivered coaching, then planning, then advice. Coaching was the thing that we really delivered at the time. They were very big into financial well-being. They were a fully chartered firm. And I just felt that they would help me grow in ways that I wasn't getting growth at my current firm. So I made the change over to Ovation, but James Mackay was my replacement at Jones Hill. And we spent a month together just learning and training each other, okay? And then we carried on speaking to each other, over the years to come, whilst he would come over to the Next Gen Planners workshop here in Bristol. But no, James was my replacement, Jones Hill.
Right, okay. And then, so then you would keep, so how then did Fraser James come to be?
Fraser James came to be, James Mackay and I were sitting in Bristol Corn Street pub, and James was telling me about how one day he would love to start his business. And he was telling me all about the business that he would want to start, and I was just a curious ear listening to it. Because I think in the back of my mind, I always had this entrepreneurial itch, but I always came to it from the perspective of more of an operations perspective, as opposed to an advisory perspective. I had a few clients, I was qualified as an advisor, but an advisor was not my strong suit at all. I was far better on the operations side. And James was far better on the client side. And I remember hearing his business and didn't say too much, but we had a number of conversations. And after a while, I said to him, the idea that you've got for this business pretty much lines up with what I've written down as a business plan, just for myself to try and just keep it active in my mind. I'd love to discuss how we could look at doing this together. And then I think we had somewhere between 12 and 18 months, James would come over to my house once a week for dinner. We'd cook up this terrible dinner, and neither of us was a good cook, but we'd have a really good conversation. And we would just pick a topic, and we'd say, what does the client look like? What does the website look like? What does brand look like? What does investments look like? What does fees look like? And we would just, in a very natural but casual way, just flesh out what this would look like in detail. Because I think we're both relatively cautious people. I think the quality of your business reflects the quality of your business partnership. And we wanted to make sure that if we were going to get married, that we had a really good period to get to know one another. So when we went in, we had kind of full conviction and confidence with each other that we would give this the best chance of success. Because if you look back at Fraser James, we had no clients, we had not much money, we were 28 years old, something of that nature. We had no idea what we were doing, and we were going to give it a go. So we wanted to try in some way stack the odds in our favor. And I think just making sure that you had a really solid business partner on that journey was the sort of thing we thought, whilst we don't know all of the things we're going to have to do, having a good partner to help you navigate through that would be really helpful.
What were the main principles that you wanted to have for this business?
We have core values as a business, and I think about those in relation to the business partner that I have now. One of those is in it together. It's really easy to celebrate when things go well. It's even more important, I think, when things don't go well, and you support each other and you lift each other up, and you make sure you share that risk and you share that accountability and you share that journey together. That was the sort of thing that I wanted to have with James. And there was just a number of situations, a number of challenges, negotiating exits from existing employers, raising the capital to start this business, where we really shared that together. That was a journey where it was neither him or I, but we, much like a marriage, it was, a 1 + 1 = 3. We felt that we would be stronger working together. Another one we've got is raise the bar. I felt like James would raise the bar compared to me as an advisor. I would be an average advisor at best, and that's probably generous. James, I think, is an exceptional advisor. I knew that by doing this business with him, we would deliver far better advice than if I did it without him. And I really trusted he had high levels of integrity and honesty, which was really important to me because ultimately it's your business and you bear the risk and the liability. Equally, he thought that I would help raise the bar by having really strong structure, strategy around the business, and operational management than if he led necessarily an advisor-led business that was really focused on clients and sales, but didn't have that structure and the strategy in place behind it. So we had in each other complementary skill sets that neither of us had the whole puzzle, but between us we added them together, and it was the 1 + 1 = 3. But we really respected what each of us brought. That sort of Venn diagram had a little bit of overlap, which is important, but we were really sort of remaining in our camps. And this is where we thought we're very different, but we're very complementary, and that we felt that we would come together. Now, we're not best mates, we're not super close friends, but we've got a real professional respect for each other, where we feel that the other person really uplifts the other one and can help us grow together better.
So it kind of nicely leads me onto your role at Fraser James and the Director of Operations role, because as we were saying before, it's not something that I wouldn't have said that there's too many of these roles about. I mean, you alluded to Brett Davison and Dominica beforehand, but what does this role entail on a day-to-day basis for you?
Yeah. I'm trying to think about the journey because it's changed over time. Like just to give a very quick backstory, we started as 2 people and we pretty much remained 2 people for about 3.5 years. We would have a contractor who'd work with us on occasion, but it would really just be bolt-on capacity. But in terms of we did not intend to grow a business or a team. So the director of operations role wasn't really too much of a role in the way that it is now because we didn't have people, which is now a really big part of the role. And operations are really simple when there's 2 of you. Like if he's not doing it, I'm doing it. There's your workflow. Like it was very, very simple in terms of managing the business.
So was it James did the advising, you did absolutely everything else, admin, power planning, compliance, so on and so forth?
So the roles and responsibilities were James did marketing and James did advice.
Yep.
I would do finance, I would do strategy, I would do clients, and then I'd do operations. And operations, you could roll power planning administration into it. But if you think about the 6 functions of a business, HR, finance, strategy, compliance, we basically divide those up 4-2, but reflective that those 4 were not full-time roles, whereas the 2 that James was doing, they were growing over time. Marketing was just such a key input for a new business. Finding new business was the business, and then also looking after the existing business. That was really James's remit. We kept it, the 2 of us, for about 3 and a bit years, and then we kind of got to this point in 2023, deliberately running a lifestyle business, relatively successful, profitable, productive lifestyle business. But we got to the point where we were looking after about 80 client families. We hit our revenue requirements, we hit our personal income requirements, and you get to that point where Mrs. Miggins wants to refer John Smith, and you have 1 of 3 options. You compromise on the service quality because you're at capacity, you give up your evenings and your weekends, or you hire someone, or you turn away. Now, we burnt ourselves out during COVID. We just got really busy, really silly, right? And we just worked through it. And we were getting to the point now in our earlier 30s and thinking, I don't know if I want to work 60, 70 hours a week forever. It would be quite nice to work a normal work week, 35 to 40 hours. I don't want to compromise on the client quality and the service. One of the reasons that we set up the business is we felt that naively we could do something better than just this typical once a year sit down annual review model. We really wanted to deliver this really strong, compelling proposition for clients. So we didn't want to do that. We didn't really want to turn Mr. Smith away. We worked so bloody hard to find him, and felt like we'd done quite a good job that people referred him to us. So it was hire a team. Now, this was new for us, the hiring thing in this business. We'd never done it before. So that was the point, I think, where we started sitting down with people like Brett Davison and Dominica and said, if we're going to build a business more than just us, what would good look like? What would need to be true for this to be successful? And we just approached this with a massive amount of humble pie. Our first team member, Claire, joined us 3 years ago, just a month under 3 years ago today. And since then, we've just trying to be really intentional, really purposeful around who we're hiring for, what we're hiring for, why we're hiring, when we're hiring, how we're hiring. And there's just this constant pursuit of improvement around the 4 R's, but recruitment, retention, reward, recognition. I look out at the marketplace and I do not see an excellent business that isn't excellent recruitment, reward, recognition, and retention. I think that is not an add-on to the job, that is the job, particularly if you're looking to grow and build a business. And I think that's just a key capability and skill set that you need to master, whether you do it yourselves, whether you work with third parties, but I think it's a really, really important one. So we started approaching this, I guess, with sincerity and intentionality around about 2023.
And then, sorry, I'm going to go back to the COVID era now, because you were very well placed at this point. So you'd done the remote side of things.
Yeah.
Everybody was you and James had obviously bought into it.
Yeah.
You had a contractor that was maybe doing a bit of work from time to time. So COVID came along, you said you worked yourself into the ground. Did that mean did the business just go, was that the real growth point for you when COVID hit?
Yeah, so I remember quite clearly. I went to Cuba in February 2020, and the day I went to Cuba was the first day one person caught COVID in the UK. And I remember reading that at the airport and thought, that's quite cute. This Chinese virus has made its way over here. Hopefully that flu will be gone by the time I'm back in a month. In Cuba, you don't get very good internet unless you really want to sit down in an internet cafe, which I didn't. But I did have a friend who was tracking this quite closely. So every 2 or 3 days, he gave me an update. He says, 10 people have got COVID. 100 people have got COVID. 1 person's died. 20 people have died. 300 people have died. And it just escalated like that. But I would only get snapshots every 3 days. And I remember that first person dying, 300 people dying. And the next thing I got was the government's calling every foreign national back to the UK. They've put on a plane, which is the last plane out of Cuba. You need to get on it. It's in 2 days' time. And I remember thinking, I sat up straight and I was like, this is serious. And I remember on the plane home thinking, what are going to be the implications from the business perspective? Markets are already dropping. But I remember thinking, like, from a business operations, business strategy, how do things change? Like, we're in this new world for a period of time. How do things change? We were already fully digital, but we were still local. We were looking for clients locally. We were searching for, we were reaching, we were marketing to clients locally. I remember thinking, first thing is distance to become irrelevant. In the way that people do online shopping with Amazon or whatever it is, I think people will do online shopping financial advice, whether they're in Land's End or John O'Groats. So we just opened up nationally. Okay, we used unbiased branches nationally. We were appealing nationally on marketing. We would do paid for marketing because I think most advisors were still looking within, they were basically trying to take their existing business and then just do it online. Whereas we'd said, well, if you were to redesign this business so that it was in this fully online economy, when it was fully digitized, we tried everything from a marketing perspective. The things we thought would work didn't work very well for us. The things we didn't think would work did work quite well. So there was just like this great piece of feedback, like just trial things, just experiment, like you don't have all the answers. The thing that works for us is, I thought that when people would look for financial advice, they would start online or they would validate online. And this is like 2020, early days, so it's still relatively early, but even if they got a referral, they would want to go online, see social proof, see it's a good business, see reviews, testimonials, all of those things. So we did all of the things to try and get a good online presence. One, for people to find us, and two, for people who did find us to have a good impression about us. So we would put out long tail content, people who worked in technology and they were looking to understand how the equity taxation works. Nobody else was doing that. We put that out straight away. We're the first result on Google. You type that in and you find us straight away. It was very easy to differentiate and stand out at that point online because most advisors' websites were built in the 90s. AI wasn't on the scene in producing shed loads of content. And it was very easy to find sort of blue ocean opportunities of like some demand, no supply. The RSU taxation was one. Lifetime allowance, as mad as it sounds, was another. There's very, very few high quality articles around lifetime allowance and helping people plan for that, particularly as it would change and you'd have all of the protections, etc. It was really easy to stand out. So we would just get real niches, real pockets of long tail opportunity to come to us. And there was a growth phase where we were just receiving 100 plus inquiries per month and we wouldn't have the capacity to deal with them. And we would get to the point of saying we'd have to put barriers in place, we'd have to put capacity constraints in place, we'd put wait lists in place. And we were just in this like very, very fortunate opportunity that we stumbled into just by complete experimentation. And it was really around that sort of online search, digital marketing, that at the time, it wasn't until sort of late 22 that I think most advisors really modernized. And then in 22/23 AI come on the scene and you find the content really increases and the quality of marketing increases. But there was just like this golden opportunity of about 2 years, 2.5 years that we really leaned into.
The 100 inquiries a month from, I mean, you only had 80 families. So
Yeah.
what, just out of interest, when you were getting this, what were the conversions like of this in terms of if an inquiry came in, who would you actually deal with and take on as a client in general?
I think one of the challenges is quality control.
Yep.
So I liken this to trying to drink from a fire hose. There was plenty of water coming through, but it was hard to kind of get what you wanted. Very low, but it was often as much our choice as it was theirs.
Yep.
So we would get anything from John Smith is looking to put 10 grand into an ISA. Can we help him with that? To we've got multi-estate, trust planning, complexity end on this side. I think the one thing we were very clear on, and maybe has been an advantage to us, is focus and discipline. Like, although we had a very wide set of opportunity, it would have been very easy to just be undiluted and just say yes, right, and we can help. Because this is a helping profession, we like to help people. I think we were really clear around who we serve, what we do, what we charge, you know, where we add value. And that meant we said no to a lot of people. Now, one thing we did do is we set up referral partnerships, or we would actually refer those out and say, hey, if you're looking for whatever type of service that we either don't provide or are not best placed to provide, chances are we may know somebody who can help you. Let us point in the right direction. We would have top of funnel screening, and this is true now if you go on our website, you go on book a consultation, you kind of fill in a few questions, and depending on the answers to those questions, you'll get one of several responses. Great, here's an advisor that you should speak with based on what you've said you're looking for. Put the details in here, we can book a meeting. Calendly shows up. Sorry, we're not quite the right fit, we don't provide that service. Here's a directory, or here's a contact, or here's something that you can provide. So very, very top of funnel screening. But then we would screen at each stage. One of the things that we had before we had the staff in was we would have right fit calls. 15 minutes. Are we in the right place? Can we help? Are we going to be of great value for what you're looking for? If we're not, can we efficiently sort you to a place that you want to help? But this was a challenge, the varying quality within there. One of the things that we've tried to work on over the last few years is really be very specific around who we work with and what we do, and make sure we've got good marketing material and support and collateral so that when somebody comes to us, they know. And I always liken it to, if you're a 70-year-old male walking into a Superdry store, the blaring music in the entrance hall probably tells you you're not in the right place, and the funky lighting and the rest of it. I think we want to make sure all of our materials, so when somebody walks in and they're the right fit, they go, yeah, I'm in the right place. These guys understand me, they work with people like me, they've helped people like me, they've got proven social proof there. And equally, the wrong people will go, this is not quite my right place, but let me get somewhere that will help me.
So who are the primary targets for Fraser James?
Yeah, it's changed over time. So when we started, it was Henry. Henry's high earner, not rich yet. But it was people who were in our 30s, and it probably comes from the age imposter syndrome of where they have a lot of life transitions and financial implications. They're getting married, they're getting their first proper job, they're starting their business, they're getting divorced, they're having a kid. All of these things, these life events have financial implications. And we felt this is an underserved, overlooked market that we could service. The thing that we didn't really calculate was the cost to serve and therefore the profitability. These people have high expectations, they require regular services, they require regular adjustments, they're time and capacity consumptive, but they're not necessarily generating a lot of revenue. So we found it hard and profitable to service that market solely. We never wanted to take our eye off that market, but what we did is we had a two-part strategy. We would have people who are 5 years from retirement, and we would have Henry. Basically Henry and his dad, okay? We still got that. About 35-40% of our clients are Henry. They're often business owners in professional services. They're running small owner-managed businesses, and they're doing very well. And they're just at that breakout point where they've got excess cash flow, they've got good profits, they're starting to reinvest, recycle that, plan for longer term. But they've still got all of those life transition needs, having kids, bigger houses, getting divorced, whatever it may be. But then we've got what we might call pay the bills clients, people who've already built significant assets, who are on their runway to retirement, and they've just reached pivotal points. The mortgage is paid off, the kids have left for university, they're no longer looking for that next big promotion, they're really looking to sort of wind down as they get closer to retirement. So it's a two-pronged approach. The Henry is the bit the business was set up for, and I think will be the future of the business, but we realized that we couldn't just focus on those because it just wasn't a profitable service model in and of its own right. So we had a blend of the two.
Is it going to be, these Henry clients are obviously, they're not going to be Henry forever, are they? Yeah. So these guys are going to develop, they're going to get into 40s, 50s, and then so on and so forth. So are you going to replenish the clients getting new Henrys in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think about it as seeds and flowers. Like you plant seeds and not every seed turns into a flower. Some of them have, and they've really bloomed, and some of our biggest clients now started out as our smallest clients then. And it's just amazing to see the trajectory. If you was to map their wealth and their worth over time, it's just absolutely astronomical. But not all seeds work out. So I think the first thing you need to do is kind of accept that there is a failure rate on some of these. We internally term them ambitious accumulators. Sometimes a bit ambition isn't enough. They need the luck, they need the opportunity for their business to scale and sell, whatever it may be. But yes, I still prefer to get people at the earliest stage possible. Somebody who's set up their business, maybe have just had their first year of successful accounts, but they're on a real growth journey and they're looking for a financial partner to put in place the infrastructure for them, to be the trusted sounding board, to help them on that growth journey. We're always looking for people on the earlier end of that curve because I think it's still overlooked, underserved, and an easy opportunity. You try and get someone who's sold a business, they've got a corporate advisory team around them, they've got corporate finance, they've already got accountants, they've got lawyers, they've already got people telling them what to do with their money. Try and become that trusted advisor for them earlier on. I think you can have more impact with them and you build a deeper relationship with them. One of our mottos is play long-term games with long-term people, and that certainly plays into that. We want to work with people who are on a great growth trajectory, be of great value to them, and find these win-win opportunities where we both grow together.
I think you might have alluded to this before, the niche side of it. Do you niche in terms of types of profession that you tend to look into?
Not as much as we'd like, to answer your question. On the profession side, I think there's many ways to niche, right? But on the profession side, we look at our top 10 or top 20 clients. They're anything from publishing to pharmaceutical to banking. So we don't find there's a certain sector where these are where we can be of best value or most profitable, or these are where we can, provide something that's different to the rest of the marketplace. what we find is there's a mindset over the money thing. So people who share a mindset that's similar to ours, people who are looking for win-win opportunities, people who are looking to grow, people who are looking to delegate, people who are looking for a trusted advisor. There is a mindset niche in my mind more than a profession niche. The one thing on the profession side is people who work in professional services. So that could be other professionals in tax, accountancy, law, but they understand the value of professional advice already. They're willing to pay for professional advice. They sell professional advice in their main already. Whereas when you find people who work in the production economy, they will often not place the same level of value on a professional service because they're just not involved in that.
Yep.
For example, we find it very easy to work with tax advisors and lawyers because they are very used to the value of professional advice and professional service.
I wanted to go on to the job advert
Yeah.
side of things, because that was the reason why I got in contact with you initially. So for anybody that doesn't know, Chris has been recruiting over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 months, something
That's
like
right.
that.
Yeah.
With some success by the sounds of things. But also I think that the job adverts are quite they're unique. I mean, as I was saying to Chris before, I pride myself on the job adverts I do, trying to make them stand out. They're a bit quirky, but yours just spoke to financial planners straight away, I thought anyway, in terms of just how straightforward they were. They were simple. They don't put a job description in there, and I think that there's a key fundamental difference between a job advert and a job description. Just tell me what the success has been like with the recruitment side of things.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I guess short backstory, there was 2 of us in 2023. There's 7 of us now. I think there'll be 10 of us within the next 6 months. And we will see beyond that. So we've kind of grown relatively quickly over the last couple of years from a standing start. The hires that we've made this year, so over the last 6 months, include 2 paraplanners and 1 associate financial planner. And then the previous year before that, we had an associate financial planner, a paraplanner, and an administrator as well. How has the success gone? Like, there's a few things I know now that I wish I knew then. The first is, like, it takes way longer than you expect it will. When you factor in total time to, prepare materials, disseminate, interview, make hires, serve notice periods, 3 months training with us, you could be looking at 9+ months. And that's the sort of thing now, whenever we're trying to capacity plan forwards, we always say, let's try and be 3-6 months ahead, because it probably means we're going to be on time by the time we get there. It's really easy to underestimate how long it will take to recruit successfully, and really hard to understand how quickly you're going to roll. So I generally find trying to recruit ahead of time, because this is a relatively high margin business. If you have somebody in the business 2-3 months before you need them, I think they're still going to be productive and it's still going to be profitable. So it's better to have somebody in and be a little bit overstaffed than understaffed.
Yep.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think when we create job ads, and we're still evolving this and learning this, we are trying to write to an audience of one. We have just as you have an ideal client profile, we have an ideal employee profile, and we map out psychographics, we map out their mindset, we map out their skills and experience, we map out their attitude, we map out their personalities and behaviors. That for us is really, really easy to write the job ad by that point, because you know exactly who you're looking for. I'll take an example around the paraplanner. We were thinking this could be a working mother, for example, who's mid-late 30s, somebody who requires some flexibility around work, somebody who's already established themselves professionally, somebody who is looking to really contribute and grow within their role, but is not looking to lily pad into an advisory role because they have other personal family responsibilities. It makes it really easy to tailor that job ad to use the language that they would think is important to them, to understand what the benefit structure would be important to them. So really trying to find markets of one for your job ad and then writing exclusively for them. Another thing is the fold. Depending where you're advertising, we use LinkedIn, for example, a lot. You have a limited amount of text in the fold. And I just think people's attention spans are super short. So you have to have a really compelling hook and impact statement in there. Why us? We are selling this job. They are not applying. They have many, many options. We're only looking for one employee. And I think we have to state very, very clearly, what's the value? What's the point? What's the benefit? How is this different? And then why is it worth them pressing read more, click more, learn more, whatever it may be, to go and invest those 5 or 10 minutes? And I find it's a bit like the newsletter subject line. If you don't get, the opening statement right, you're not going to get the rest. So we spend quite a lot of time using copywriters, speaking to other people, saying, A/B testing. What does this work? Does that work better? Thinking about it from their perspective, what would make them want to apply? We always think like, if we were looking for a job, what would we want? What would be important for us when we're thinking about applying for somewhere? What would need to be true in those first 30, 50 words? How can we create that in a way that's going to really resonate with them?
I mean, everything you've said there, I think a lot of people could probably take a lot from that, because I don't think it's done often enough. You know, as I was saying before, people just put job descriptions down and they'll say great job, and that's it. But as well, the fact that you were saying that you tailor it to the employee as well, and you have an idea already in your mind of the person, and then you try to speak to them. I mean, that's just, I mean, it's just not done often enough. And to be honest with you, it's not something that I have, I've thought about the financial planners, let's say, in terms of actually speaking to somebody and saying this is going to be a single mother who maybe needs a bit of flexibility, so on and so forth. I haven't really thought like that, so it's making me think, well, can I do this? Just what do you do in terms of when you, for instance, if you go, just take the example that you've given there of a single mother, what do you do? What's the language? What do you do in order to make it appeal to them?
First thing is we try and go and speak to those persons.
Yep.
And we run those job ads past them and say, you know, what do you think? What are your inputs? What would be your needs? What would be your preference? A bit like when we're designing a client experience, we speak to the clients and say, what's important? What do you value? What do you not value? So I think going to the audience as much as possible and trying to get audience input and feedback, I think is really, really useful. I'm not a single mother, so as much as I can try and put myself in their shoes, I actually think their thoughts, their reflections are just going to be far more valuable than ours. We're going to put it in our tone, our style, our brand. But we do that, like we go out and we do marketplace research. It's a bit old school, but we will literally speak to people and say, we're looking for this type of person in this job. You fit that profile, even if you're not necessarily in financial services. How does this fit for you? What's missing? What would you need to know? What more needs to be on there for you to consider this a worthwhile fit? What's surplus? What's redundant?
Is this targeted, or do you just for example, do you sort of, maybe you're out for dinner or something and somebody's there that's a single mother, and you'll just go and say, oh, we're doing this advert at the moment, what do you think of this? Is that it? Just comes up in everyday conversation?
No. Friends, family, I'll circulate to them and say, we're thinking of putting this job out, and this is the target profile, you kind of fit within that. How does this land for you?
And then you recruited somebody off the back of this, a single working mother?
Yeah, for none of the jobs did we get the single mother, for what it's worth.
Okay, right.
No, I'm just thinking about it. We're going through some interviews at the moment, so this may or may not be true pretty soon. But none of the jobs that we've made in the last 6 months did we get the single mother. I think we did get the person who had the right mindset, though. I think we did get the person who culturally is aligned, values is aligned. We do have a framework for, and I could talk through that around right person, right role, trying to understand that. But I think going through the process of thinking who the job is for, what it is, what it isn't, makes it far, far easier. Being a remote business, we get hundreds of applications. Right? For any job, we had 1,400 applications for an administrative role. That is a real luxury, but it's also a challenge to say, where's the needle in this haystack, and try and sort that efficiently. So having very clear around who's it for, but also who's it not for, hopefully brings that number down a little bit, but it also makes it easier to sort that number using some technology and AI and the rest of it to say, who's this not for?
So in terms of the culture and value side of things, what are those, because that will be for absolutely anybody that you recruit here.
Yeah.
What are the main things that you're looking for there?
Yeah. So we think about right person, right role. Right person is somebody who shares all of our values as a business, and we have a bar within the business. You're either above the bar or below the bar, and if you're below the bar on any of the values, we just don't think you're going to be the right fit for the business. Not to say you're not going to be a great candidate, we just think you're not going to thrive in this business and get the best out of us, and we're probably not going to get the best out of you. We have our values stated in our job description. We have them publicly stated on the website. They're fully embedded and operationalized throughout the business. We use it through growth and development. We use it during hiring. We use it through firing. We use it with client selection. It's not something that's on the wall. It's generally something that is the guiding beat of the organization. So we have a number of questions, both during the job application itself. There's some screening questions, first round interview, technical capability assessment, that's designed to test these values exactly. I mentioned earlier about being in it together. I mentioned earlier about being long-term, playing long-term games. I mentioned about raising the bar. We have 6 of them. So for us, it's really important. In a natural way, they're tested on that. They have opportunities to show whether they align with those values or whether they're unlikely to align with them. That for us is just the first stage sorting. first stage mechanism to see if this person is a worthwhile candidate. When we get on to like, is this person right for the role? We think about GWC. This comes out of the book of Gino Wickman, Traction. Get it, want it, capacity to do it. We think about get it is somebody who genuinely understands the role that you're asking them to do, has proven experience that they are capable of doing it, and they will do the thing you asked and probably the 3 things you didn't because they know the role better than you. Want it's pretty obvious. They really, really want it and they will move heaven and earth to get there. Capacity to do it or capability to do it is like if they don't get it already, if they don't have the skills, they don't have the experience, they don't have the background, what makes us think that they will have the intellect, the intelligence, the passion to bridge the gap between where they are now and where they need to be? We think you've got to get it and want it, or want it and have the capacity to do it. The second one's more of a riskier bet because they're unproven. And we always think you have a mix in the organization. You have growers. We've just hired a grower. We've just hired an associate planner that's going to move through to that financial planner role, but it's very much a transitionary role. But you also need to have anchors. You need to have people who are great at the job. They're not necessarily looking to lily pad into that next whatever role it is, but they really want to grow within this role and contribute and be a really strong driver within the business. And I think trying to get the mix between them at any point in time for a small business like us is really important.
So essentially, it's probably better to GW rather than GC, I guess. That's probably
yeah. GW would be our preferred. So like they proven experience, they already do it, and they want it. I don't think you can want it more than they want it. I think they have to have this inner drive, they have to have this intrinsic motivation, they have to have this ambition, this growth mindset, this intelligence. I think they have to just have that for themselves. What you can then do is create a great culture where you get the best out of them, but I don't think that should be the motivator for them. I think they should be self-motivated, self-managers, self-disciplined, self-focused. When I hear somebody and I'm interviewing them and they say, I've just come back from the Planex podcast and I've just come back and I've done this conference, and I think, God, they're thinking about this all the time. They're wanting this. Like, if they don't get it already, they've shown that they're smart, they're hardworking, they're intelligent, they're academic, they will get it. Do we want to go on that journey with them? Are we willing to make that investment? And often the answer is yes. We've had some people that have come on with us and we've really been the accelerant for their careers. I'm thinking of a lady who works with us, who'd been a client servicing operations person for 7 years. She's now a very capable and accomplished paraplanner with us. She never had been in a workplace that had the psychological safety, that had the support, that had the encouragement to get the best out of her. Those things I think are really important, where you can help somebody go from A to wherever and be part of that journey with them. And it's a win-win, I think, and it works both sides. But we will make those bets with people, but I think we have to balance those bets. Being a small organization, when there's a team of 7 of you, you get one wrong, it's really, really impactful. So we've often gone through recruitment rounds and got to the end, and the answer is which of the 3 would we hire? It's should we hire any of the 3? And sometimes the answer is no hire. Someone said a stat to me which blew my mind, and they said a bad hire costs 10 times their salary. In terms of the opportunity cost, the replacement cost, the training, everything. And then we've made some hires before that we've got wrong, and it is us, not them, just to be clear, and I can see exactly where that 10 times figure comes from. Because if you was to count up, everything you can, and then everything that can't be counted, the impact is just significant. So like, the cost of a bad hire is just astronomical. The benefit of a good hire is astronomically good. So when we get a really bad one, we get a really good one, it makes us sit up and go, we need to take this thing seriously. Like this is, one good hire might be worth 30, 40, 50 clients. We spend so much time and effort refining our client process and our client experience. We're going to have to put as much time and effort, if not more, into the employee process and the employee experience and the employee value proposition.
So what, I think you alluded to it beforehand. What do you do in terms of the interview? I'm interested specifically for financial planners here. What do you do for them in terms of trying to recruit that? Do you use psychometric testing, did you say?
Yeah, we do.
So what do you do exactly to try and make sure that they are the right people?
Yeah. The value alignment questions, that's really important to us. There's a few things we do that may be different in interviews to others. We try and test them to do the actual role as opposed to some theoretical exercise. For example, we will give them an annual financial planning, agenda, case pack, and we'll say you've got 15 minutes to review it, you've got 20 minutes to present it. We will use role plays and case studies like you would in the real workplace, rather than some, can you do a bond calculation over here? Things that they're actually going to do in their job, that are practical, that are hands-on, allows us to do a number of things. How do they work under pressure? How do they work with their team? How adaptive are they? How do they show up when they don't have all of the information? Those things hopefully get us to have a good understanding of what they're like without necessarily hiring them and finding that out on month 2 or month 3. We have the whole team interview them. So everybody who will be working with them directly will speak with them. Every single one of our interviews is recorded on Fathom, which is an AI technology we use for meetings. That AI tool then also has input and has a vote, which is, we've trained that and we've gone through all of our interviews through that. So we have a really good case study and really good context for reference throughout that. What does good, what does bad look like, numerical ratings. The thing that we're thinking of doing that we haven't done yet is pay somebody to come in for a week. Take a week's annual leave, come in and do the job with us for a week. How well do you get on with your employees? How do you show up? Are you resourceful? Are you resilient? I heard this from another organization, and it's like, do they and you need to make this leap of faith that you'd probably find out on day 2, I don't really like these people, or I actually didn't really understand this is what I was going to be doing. Why not pay them to come in for a week? And that's the sort of thing we're thinking about when we're recruiting from next year. If we get to the point and we're like, I think the proof's in the pudding, let's get them in for a week. Let's pay them like full market salary. They can take a week's leave from their existing employer. But would that be an opportunity? We're thinking about how do we get practical hands-on experience with this person.
I guess the only thing, they'd be treating that as essentially a job interview, wouldn't they? That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But I see what you mean though, because the thing is that they will let their guard down to a degree, won't they? I like that idea. That's a really good one. Although I don't know whether everybody would do it or not. And the whole team, I'm interested with Fathom that you were talking about there in terms of, have you ever had it where everybody has essentially voted and said, yeah, this person's good, and then Fathom's come in and said, no, they're not good?
Yeah.
And how does it work? Is it a democratic system, or is it a case of it's, if there's a majority, then the majority rules?
Yeah. So it's a democratic system, to answer that first and foremost. So within the business, we read the book called Brave New Work, which is all about having this very flat management structure, flat decision making, real levels of accountability, responsibility. So this is not the James and Chris show, right? This is not James or Chris says, so that's what we're going to do. This is, I think, the people who are working with them, who are on the ground, who are going to be training them, their voice is as equally important, if not more so, in the overall decision making process. Now, if we come to a deadlock and you do need a decider, then we can play that role of decider. Yep. But we have never overruled or overturned a decision. I was talking to the team yesterday. We've got 2 people that we're considering hiring, talked it through. James and I both disagree with the team on one of them. But the rest of the team all think one way and we think another way. We're going with the team's decision. We think they see something that we don't. We think they're going to be working with them more closely than we are. We value and respect their input and their contribution. We have to listen to that, and I think that's really important.
This is for a financial planner, is it?
This is for a power planner.
Right, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to listen to them. We have to think that's important. Fathom has not come up and said, I don't think you should hire this person when we thought you should, but it has come up and said, Fathom said we think you should hire this person when we think you shouldn't. Now, where we think we shouldn't was more around personality, value alignment, and I think where Fathom was looking at is like, looked at their CV, looked at their skills and experience, looked at their capabilities and gone, this is going to be a right fit. And this, I think, maybe is a broader point around, person plus technology. I think there's nuance, there's discretion, there's judgment, there's intuition that right now, at least, technology doesn't do as well sometimes as humans, and often a lot of the times as well as humans. So we still have this like human in the loop, human overlay, human, checking the output, because I think this is a human business. You're working with other humans. I think at the point you start to abdicate that responsibility, you're going to be tone deaf to a lot of things. Now, we might have been completely wrong, but I think there is something for gut feel, and I think that's still very intuitive and very powerful, and I think we should listen to that when it shows up.
I'm just surprised. I'm surprised in some ways that you're not a financial planner, because you really are very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you come across really, really well, really well. Like I'm genuinely surprised that you're. I don't, because the operation side is just as important as the financial planning side. But I am surprised that you don't do it. But it works.
It's unusual, isn't it? Because I think I'm the only ops person I know who's a 50% shareholder. I know of other ops for financial planners, but it's normally like 80-20, 90-10. So in one sense, I've got this like, I feel like it's a wonderful opportunity. Like this business, this flourishing business, 50% control and ownership, and yet I don't have to do all the client-facing things and be time-bound and all the other bits. I'm just like, yeah, why would I change that? I've always thought if this didn't work out, Fraser James, I'd try and go do the one-man band thing. I just think the way that technology's evolved over time, right? You could really take out a lot of the admin and the rest of it. But that's more just to prove it to myself. Could I do
That
it?
you would be fine, but I don't think if it ain't broke, why fix it? I mean,
That's exactly
you've
it.
got the
Yeah.
business, and
Yeah.
you know it's doing very well. So, how big is it now? The business?
We've just done over 100 grand a month, so 1.2 million for recurring
1.2
revenue,
million, okay.
52% profit margin.
Okay,
So it's
yep.
going to be about 540.
52% profit margins.
52% net. So after James and I have been paid pre-tax, we grow at 45% compounded currently. We grew at 52 last year. We were at 55 last year, sorry. We were at 40 now. Growing headcount relatively quickly. I don't know if we'll sustain those growth rates as we get larger. That's the thing. Like, we've got the spreadsheet that models it out. It's like, in 4 years' time, we're 168 million of assets roughly. I just you map it out in 4 years' time, and you're just like, that's $500 million. Like, that just doesn't. I just cannot get my head around that. But I'm like, but the growth rates are still there, and they still hold thus far. So,
do you think as the business grows, it's going to because it will get big here? I think is the culture going? Is that the one thing that's going to be compromised?
It's a really good question. There's always trade-offs in anything, okay? And I think as we grow as a business, to try and be realistic around what the trade-offs are, can you be as adaptive and iterative as you are when there's a two-person team? You know, trial this piece of technology on a Monday, have it fully embedded by the Tuesday? Probably not, right? That's one. Another is like, how does the culture grow? One of the things I'm really conscious around is like, generally true, the larger the advice firm, the more time is spent on overhead and compliance, and the less time is spent necessarily on the client and being client-centric. There are examples of large organizations that I think are doing this very well, but generally true around you have to have compliance and governance and controls and risk management and the rest of it. And I've looked at sort of different growth curves. So if you could sort of follow that S curve of growth, you know, sometimes you go backwards, sometimes you go forwards, and you sort of track it upwards. There's this like gap between about 14 people and about 30 people, where your experience drops, your efficiency drops, you don't get as good metrics on, I don't know, profitability per employee or client experience until you start to get in those scale benefits and you start to have heads of and you have the correct infrastructure in place. I don't know if we want to grow past about 15 people total, because for a few reasons. One, I don't want to focus on overhead and compliance. I want to focus on the client as much as possible. Two, I think the culture thing it starts to get lost, I think, a little bit. Some of those values where you can, you know, operationally embed it and you can get the feedback and you can see it happening and you can update and you adjust. I think that becomes harder as you grow. It's not impossible at all. I just don't know if we have the capabilities to maintain and manage that. For me, there's like just some non-negotiables though. It's like, I want everybody to have a really good work-life balance in the company. I think that's really important. I want to be proud of the work that we're doing for clients. I want to be known for doing great work. That's really important. I want to make sure there's great opportunities for people within the firm. One of the reasons that we're growing is we have growing individuals, and a growing firm creates opportunities for people. So I'm trying to find out where can we make sure our non-negotiables are maintained, and where can we be accepting around some of the trade-offs that can happen, and how can we be smart around that to try and manage it. I'm always kind of looking ahead and going, okay, if we're at 7 now, what needs to be true at 10? What needs to be true at 15, 20? I was speaking to somebody now that runs an 85-person firm, and I said, you know, what were the inflection points along the way? And they said at certain stages in terms of headcount, they basically had to completely break what they were doing and what was already working, and then rebuild it for where they were trying to get to. And you could imagine the resistance that happened when that happened for them.
Yep.
So for example, on our side, we've just this year completely restructured how we deliver ongoing services for clients. It used to be the very traditional, come in, have your annual review, maybe have a bed and pension ISA meeting, maybe have some form of update around tax later on in the year. But it was very scattered, it was very unstructured, it was very unfocused. We've moved to Surge planning. Surge, we deliver all of our annual planning meetings within 12 weeks of the year. Total. That's 4 sets of 3 weeks throughout the year in each quarter. We then moved to batch everything. Batch their employee benefits review, batch their annual scheme pays for the pension allowances. That has built in additional efficiency, but it's also enabled us to enhance the client experience because we've taken the time that we're saving, right, by having a more efficient process and going, how do we go deeper with clients? How do we provide more to clients? How do we increase the value proposition for clients? So I think around these, like, you can grow, but it depends how you reharvest that. Do you just say, well, we've got, you know, more efficiency, so we're just going to have more clients? Because I think that's the default for a lot of firms. Oh, we can service 150 clients now rather than 120. Do you say we're going to do more for the clients that we've got? Do you reduce your charges and still maintain a good margin? Like, I think there's different ways you can grow and then reharvest those benefits. And I think I'm interested in doing that in a way that's going to still align with our non-negotiables. Great client service, great opportunities for people to grow, be proud of the work that we're doing.
I am, God, the 52% pre-tax thing, again, I can't get my head over that. That's like ridiculously good for IFAs, because I asked them the profitability side of things quite a lot, and it is really good.
There's a couple of drivers for that. And some are, I guess, specific to us, and maybe some are...
Remote working will probably help a lot.
Remote working helps a lot. Like, so we do a large survey with Dimensional every year, the Global Advisor Study, and you get all of the benchmarking data. So we see exactly where we sit, and they have different quartiles, etc. Office costs, total office costs, so that's not just the rent, but that's the electricity, that's the tax, that's everything, can often amount up to about 8% of revenue. Now, if you think the average IFA has got a profit margin of maybe 25%,
yeah, that sounds about right.
That's 25% of their profits. So that's like massive when you think about it on the bottom line. Like, that's really, really high. And I think like that's just something we just have as a natural built-in advantage that just many, many businesses do not. Ovation are a great company, and they've got this lovely office on Queen Square, but I know that they signed a really long lease just before COVID happened. And I think that's typical of a lot of businesses. You go into these really long lease cycles and really long fixed periods, and then you can't get out of them as your circumstances change.
I mean, there wasn't really too much you could do about that. I mean, the one, I guess that there were some companies that I know that managed to negotiate a pretty good deal around COVID time.
Good.
Yeah, because naturally, because they had these empty office spaces, and
but just on the profit, we pay above market average for human capital. Like, so that's one of the line items on Dimensional. We do pay above market average, but yet we still have, and it's all of the other stuff. Like, I think there's just a lot of stuff in businesses that people have, a bit like our personal subscriptions, that you don't regularly review and go, are we getting good value for money there? Like, is there something else that can do this better, faster, cheaper? Like, we review this every quarter. Like, we've got pretty good cost control in the business. There's this thing with business owners, whereas if you're paid from the business, you just don't weight it as well as if you paid it out of your own pocket. I view that business money as, clients' money, as employees' money, as our own money, and just give that the respect it deserves. And I think that like regular cost control is important.
It is true, isn't it? Because you sometimes think to yourself, oh, I remember speaking to one of my friends about doing something. God, I'm going to have to take this out potentially. But we were going to do something, and we could basically put it down as a business expense. So you're absolutely right. You just think to yourself, it's £100. There you go.
Business expense, of course I will.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're right though. You need to treat you need to treat it like it's your own money essentially, because it is, it's its own entity, isn't it? So.
And then the last thing on that is, like, it's a cyclical business. Financial advice, like particularly if you're linked to investment markets and that's where your revenue and remuneration comes from, you need to make sure you've got good buffers in there. So although we have high profit margins, we're not ripping those out. Like, we actually keep a really good level of cash buffer in the business so that when the next downturn happens, we can go to all the employees and say, here's a great pay rise, right? As opposed to here's a redundancy. And on that retention thing, like, I saw so many people in COVID go on furlough and then get laid off who were good team members because the business was just not well positioned and resilient to be able to pay them and support them through that period. So for me, it's like, there's a lovely book by a guy called Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. Like, I think of business as the infinite game. Like, I love the game of business. I could be this business or another business altogether, but I think like the way to win in this business is to be in this business for the longest period of time. Like, just the nature of compounding, the nature of growth. If you look at every financial advisory business, assuming it doesn't bugger up, it's a hockey stick. And I think you've got to make sure you're there for 10, 20, 30 years. I'm 35, James is 36. Like, all being well, we'll be doing this in 20 or 30 years, but we only get to continue playing if we don't run out of cash along the way. So a good profit margin, prudent cash management, I do think is really important.
It's amazing how many businesses, you'd probably be surprised at how many don't have a little buffer above the cap ad requirements that they've got. So it happens a lot. Yeah. So you did allude there to the benefits package. Yeah. So what is the benefits package for staff in general?
Yeah. I guess it comes back to, like, when we started thinking about growing a business properly, we wanted A players, and we're just quite, unabashed about that. We wanted people who are absolutely excellent. We think one A player is worth several B players and even more C players. So we are looking to build this really lean business of really exceptional people who are just able, particularly in the technology age, are going to be very leveraged and have great impact. But we also recognize they need to be compensated and remunerated very well for their efforts. This is a buyer's market. Maybe you find this on your recruitment side. Those who are exceptional have many, many options and opportunities. So we wanted to create a benefits package that A, reflected the contribution that they make, but also B, is different to maybe what they would receive elsewhere. Kind of on the core things, we try and do those very well. My general view is you pay people, and this comes from Daniel Pink around workplace psychology if you're familiar with it, but it's like, pay them enough so that money's not an issue on the table. Like, you should not be negotiating with salary because it's just disrespectful and you're not valuing their contribution correctly. We pay, and we benchmark this, in the top 10% of salaries. We're not looking to pay the highest salary. I think you attract missionaries as opposed to mercenaries. You attract mercenaries rather than missionaries, but we're trying to impact in the top 10% to say, we want people in the top 10% and we're gonna make sure we pay them in the top 10%. We also make sure that they're then well looked after in addition to salary on a non-comp side. Things like they've got a 35-hour work week, they finish at 3 p.m. on a Friday. They have a sabbatical every 3 years that's fully paid for by the company. They have reward days that's just recognition and thank you for their efforts throughout the year. These things, which are not necessarily financial, but are more rest, recovery, comprehensive well-being benefits provided for them. We then also provide a number of allowances. For example, we provide a well-being allowance, which is for them to spend as a cash allowance on anything at all that helps them get greater well-being in their role. We provide them with a growth allowance. A growth allowance is anything that helps them grow personally or professionally to help them make sure that they're succeeding. Now, that could be a particular course they want to go on that's not covered by the normal training allowance, or it could be a weekend away with their partner. We would cover the entirety of it, and we treat them like adults to say, you understand best what you need to help you grow, to be your best at work, and we want to resource and support and fund that. I think our general approach when we come to benefits is saying, how do we make sure we're looking after the employee holistically? How do we make sure that we are setting up the conditions and they have everything they need so they can be their best at work? This can create a market for lemons. You can get the people who are just takers and people who use it irresponsibly. But I think having a great recruitment process in, being very clear on who you work with and what you're looking for, make sure that when you get those people, this really is more of a holistic package for those who are already aligned with the business, as opposed to a reason in and of itself of why to join.
I mean, with the way that your recruitment process would, I think it would weed out anybody that was not going to work out.
I think so. Yeah, when you pay above market salaries, you get above market interest, and I think you just have to be more careful there. But I still think one of the best forms of leverage is like you hire A players and give them A salaries. Like you pay maybe 25, 30, 40% more than market, but you might get 100% more back. And those people, there is a market for them and they know their worth. And I think trying to cheat them or discount them just doesn't work.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. It's been really good. I have really enjoyed it. I knew it was going to be good, and I'm glad that I managed to sort of give you that I badgered you to come and do this.
Well, I appreciate it. Look, I don't do these things very often. It's new for us as well. But I think as we're trying to get the word out in some way about who Fraser James are, trying to understand, what the marketplace is like, these opportunities are great to be able to speak about it. So thank you.
No problem at all.
All right.